and then Ibert and I will kind of host this. My name's Noah Hendricks. I'm the host. I'm a senior here at the U of I. Yeah, and I've been in ISS for 4 years now, and it's been a lot of fun. So welcome all, and we'll get started talking about moon craters. So to start out, like, does anyone know what craters are? You can either type it in chat or unmute yourself and give an answer. Anybody? Well, so craters are like holes in the ground when objects like hit the surface of like other objects, such as the moon or any planetary object in space. And they came from many different impacts, and such as like meteors and all sorts of other things flying out in space, because there's a lot of random things that you wouldn't think about that are actually in space. And there are many moon craters on the moon, because I guess I won't say, but that will be later. But can anyone guess exactly how many craters there are on the moon? $10,000? Over 50 or so? 1 million? 10,000 again. Well, these are all pretty low, because just craters that are over 10 meters wide, which is quite big, that's like probably about the size of a school bus, there's over 1 billion. Oh, yeah. And so, yeah. And then, so there's so many craters on the moon. And you would think that since there's so many craters on the moon, like, shouldn't there be craters on the Earth? And we actually do. But you don't see them as much because the Earth has many natural defenses to kind of combat those craters. And the three main ones are the erosion, tectonics, and volcanoes. And so like erosion is kind of how like sediment and like water and air and wind can like kind of eat away at the current ground and just like tear it apart. And since there's not really any water on the moon that we know of, at least on the surface, it's not there to kind of eat away at the craters like it is here on the Earth. And then oh shoot, am I not sharing my slides? That's funny. All right, 1 second. I am sorry about that.
Noah's gonna start sharing slides so you guys can look at the questions and the pictures. It'll be a little more fun.
Yeah, that would help a lot. All right, you guys see that? All right. So erosion, and yeah. So as can be seen in that picture, like how it's been eaten away. And so the moon doesn't have that, and it eats away. And then the second one was tectonics. And tectonics are actually how the like crust and the ground on the earth is like moving around and constantly shifting as like its lifetime goes on. And we actually have a little video to help explain. So I will share that.
Space Place. In a snap. Tectonic forces. There was once a time when you could take a stroll from North or South America to Africa, no problem. There was no ocean to get in the way, because all of Earth's continents were stuck together in one massive supercontinent called Pangaea. But around 180 million years ago, a rift began to form, and since then, the Americas and Africa have been drifting apart, forming the Atlantic Ocean in the process. Weird, right? Despite its rock-solid appearance, Earth's surface is constantly shifting and drifting. That's thanks to something called plate tectonics. Unlike other planets, Earth's crust isn't simply a single shell. It's got big slabs of crust called tectonic plates that float on an ocean of slowly flowing, rubbery, molten rock. These plates move because of heat from Earth's core. Earth's radioactive core generates an immense amount of heat that keeps our planet from completely cooling over. Less dense molten rock travels from the core to the surface, where it then cools and returns, a process called convection. Like a slowly moving conveyor belt, this rising and sinking heat and molten rock pushes or pulls the plates together or apart. Through collisions, these plates can raise great mountains or send ocean floor to the depths of Earth's molten interior. When they move apart, new crust is formed, and with it, entirely new oceans can be created. The formation of new ocean crust occurs at volcanic mid-ocean ridges. The destruction of old ocean floor happens in subduction zones. The creation and destruction of seafloor ultimately drives the gradual shift in the arrangement of continents on Earth. Scientists think that it could be possible to walk across a single Pangaea-like continent once again, in just a couple 100 million years. Presented by NASA's Space Place.
Isn't that really cool? How the actual like surface of the Earth has just changed over the years, and it's constantly changing, like every day. But we don't notice it because it's on such a big scale, and it's happening quite slowly on as big of a scale as it is. But with that, like the craters aren't like, they're constantly like replenished and smoothened out. Whereas on the moon, it doesn't really have that activity to where the craters that are there have been there forever.
Hey, Noah, we have some questions about the radioactive core.
Oh, okay. Wait, but isn't it radioactive? So, yes, but as it comes up to the surface, it like becomes less radioactive and actual like rock, and it just slowly transformed from the like molten and radioactive like metal interior to actual hardened rock at the like edge. And once it becomes once it comes back to the surface, it is no longer explosive.
Hey Noah, I have a question.
Yes.
So I know that tectonics cause earthquakes. So if the moon doesn't have tectonics, does that mean it doesn't have earthquakes either?
So I guess I should have phrased this better. The moon actually does have tectonics, but it's very, very minimal to where it actually still has moonquakes, but it's not so much as the tectonics causing it. It's just any shift in the moon just causes vibrations throughout the whole moon. So they still actually have moonquakes, as we call them. All right. And then volcanoes. Volcanoes are one of the biggest attributes, along with tectonics, to kind of make that surface like replenished and fixed. Whenever the volcanoes erupt, that lava drips down, and then it slowly hardens again, just like the in tectonics, and it creates that new crust and new surface that just is great to like farm on it, and it has many new replenished nutrients, and it smoothens out and covers up the old craters. And the moon actually has a couple volcanoes, but they have been very dormant for many years. Whenever it's been very dormant for many of the years that we have observed the moon, and so there is evidence of the volcanoes, and we have seen newer lava flows, but the newest lava flow is millions of years old. If the moon has volcanoes, will it have lava in the volcanoes there? Yes, it does, but because it's so dormant, we have not actually experienced any of the actual lava. We have only encountered the older lava flows that we are already hardened over, and so we have never experienced the actual liquid lava on the moon. And so now it's time for our little activity. I hope you all should have shaving cream, a bouncy ball, and a piece of paper. And we're going to kind of make our own moon in our own crater. So what we're going to do is take our piece of paper and just put some shaving cream in a little glob down on it. I will try to show. So you just take the shaving cream and just kind of make a nice glob of it down on your piece of paper. And that's our moon. It's nice, fairly smooth surface, and freshly made. And we're going to take our little bouncy ball, which is our little asteroid meteor, and we're just going to drop it right down into the shaving cream to create that crater effect. So we'll just go ahead and just drop it. It might bounce, but we can just kind of leave it there. You can pull the ball out if you want. But before I do, I'll go ahead and show off. So you should be able to see around the edge of the ball, it's already indented, and the shaving cream has sunken down in around the ball. And then if you take the ball out, which could be a little messy, you can see how there's that whole little cup where that ball used to be. And that is our crater, and this is our moon. And if you can keep doing it over and over again and keep causing more and more craters until you eventually get to the 1 billion craters like the moon. And yeah, does anyone have any questions about that?
I have a question, Noah. Does this mean that the moon is made of shaving cream?
This does not mean the moon is made of shaving cream. So this actually is just for our demonstration purposes. No. The moon is made of rocks and actual, and not man-made materials. Why do people say the moon is made of cheese? I don't know the exact reason, but I believe in some like older media, like TV show, movie, someone kind of commented about it and said it was made of cheese and how it like looked like cheese, and it has just stuck. And a lot of people have accepted that and started to joke about it and say that it's actually made of cheese. But it is not made of cheese. All right. So another reason why, oh, how old is the moon? Oh, I do not know the like specific number, but it is very, very old, like millions and billions of years old.
About 4 billion, I think. 4 billion, I think.
Yes. Okay. Is there even yellow or white rocks on the moon? So there's like cheese colored rocks. I don't think there's, I mean, most of these samples that have been brought back are that like grayish, like white color. And like if you look at the moon, it's like mostly that grayish white. But though with how some of the like solar rays and how the sun shines on it, sometimes it does look that like yellowish or like orangish, like you see on like certain nights when looking up at the moon. Yeah, and so one of the reasons why a lot of meteors don't hit Earth, though, is actually because of our atmosphere. Our atmosphere not only keeps all of the air and everything inside of or not inside, but around the Earth, it also protects from things getting in, such as meteors and asteroids, because they will like come into the atmosphere, and if they're not quite big enough, they will get burnt up and then just disappear up in the atmosphere to where like we don't even see them. And so that's another reason that the Earth doesn't have as many craters. Doesn't the atmosphere pull us in?
What would happen if there are no moon?
Oh, so if there was no moon, the really not much. You would just not see the moon out in space, and the orbit of the Earth around the sun would be slightly different. It most likely, as calculations have been like done, it would not most likely not alter the orbit of the Earth enough to like crash us into anything that we would know of, or put us into a different like distance from the sun to where it like we would no longer be allowed be able to live because of harsh conditions. So basically, I guess you could say it is, but it's not really useless. In a sense, to Earth's survival, it is kind of useless, but it is very useful for like us as humans, because we can go explore the moon and like kind of see how like everything works out in like space and on other planetary objects that are not Earth and don't have our atmosphere and like what we live in. So we can kind of test out stuff there while still being very close to the Earth and like at home. Do moons have layers too? Yes, moons do have layers, just like the Earth. And almost all planets have layers. Some just have fewer than others. I heard that when moon is not there, the water changes a lot. Yes, so the moon and its gravity pulls at the water a lot. So that's why there are high tides and low tides. So whenever the moon is closest to the Earth, the water is pulled up closer to the moon. And so therefore the water level, like if you go to a beach, the beach will be like half like covered in water and you won't be able to like really enjoy the beach. But then if the moon is farther away, it doesn't pull on the water as much, so therefore the water level is low, and so the beach is much bigger. Why do we talk about wolves howling at the moons? The moon is just, since it's that dominant light source in the sky at night, many animals, including our humans, observe the moon and kind of utilize it and almost observe it as like a godly form and higher being.
I have a question, Noah.
Yeah.
Sometimes some nights you can't see the moon. Why does that happen? Where does it go?
Right. So on the nights you can't see the moon, it's because the Earth is actually blocking the light from the moon. So the light is kind of formed and coming from the sun. And when the moon is perfectly behind the Earth, the light can't get to the moon, so we just can't see it, and it's all like dark. And that's why we have the different phases, because sometimes the Earth does not fully block out the moon, and sometimes it only blocks out like half of the moon. Yeah, a great time to boogie board is when the moon would be nearest. Yes. Are there lives on the moon? Aliens. So we have not found any forms of life on the moon. There is ideas that there is small like bacteria and microorganisms that are so small that you can't even see them. There's ideas that those are on the moon, but there's no like alien life that you would see in movies on the moon. Has anyone lived on the moon? Yes, but not for long periods of time. Like all the astronauts that went up in the Apollo missions and landed on the moon, they did actually live there on the moon for short stays, only like a couple days, like weeks. So they did live on the moon, but not permanently. Also, if we grow trees on the moon, will we be able to breathe? Yes and no. So if we did grow trees on the moon, it would supply the oxygen that we could breathe, but we would need to kind of add a lot more to kind of keep that oxygen in the atmosphere and keep it to where like we could actually, it's actually breathable air and not just small traces of oxygen. Yeah, so Zimwow, or I see you raised your hand. Do you have a question? What astronomer found the moon? Ooh, that's a great question. I do not know exactly who is given credit for finding the moon, but many people back in ancient times observed the moon and like tracked what it did. So I don't know if any one person is actually credit for finding the moon. Also, could we make a Typhon sphere if you know what it is? Yes. We could, but it's very, very complicated and a lot of extra steps will be needed. How many moons can fit in the Earth? I do not actually know that number either. It is a decent amount though.
50.
50. All right. How does the sun shine through the moon? So the sun does not actually shine through the moon. It actually reflects off the moon. Almost as if the moon was like a mirror or like a bright wall next to a window in the morning. To where the sun just shines onto the moon and then we see that reflection of light and the brightly lit up moon. It's not actually shining through the moon. Also, could we plant potatoes on the moon? Yes, we could, but we do not know exactly whether or not the soil would be perfectly like good for the potatoes to actually be eaten, and whether or not they were like healthy for us to eat. Though they definitely could be planted on the moon and grown, but that's another thing where like the big countries have kind of signed a pact and a like treaty to where they try to do the least they can to kind of impact other or like outer earthly objects such as the moon or any other planets. So like we try to not just go and put our like waste or potatoes onto the moon in case we throw off its like local like geological and being.
Hey Noah, I had a question.
Yes.
So every time I look at the moon, I always see the same thing. I know that the Earth spins around, but why doesn't the moon spin around?
So the moon actually does spin around, but the rate at which it spins around is matched almost it is perfectly with the way that the Earth spins and the whole orbit. So therefore, we only ever see the one side of the moon. And then the dark side, that back side of the moon, is always facing away from the Earth. So we never actually see it from Earth. Does Pluto spin? Yes, it does. Yeah, all planets pretty much spin around their axis, as well as around the sun, or whatever star they are orbiting around. If you wrap the US around the moon, it would take up at least half. Yeah. What is the difference between a dwarf planet and a moon? So, a moon orbits a planet, and planets orbit stars, or sometimes like black holes or any other like large gravitational like pull. Whereas the moon, and so the moons don't necessarily like, they orbit around a planet itself while the planets orbit around the sun. And so if it's a small object that is just smaller than a planet, and it's the size of a moon, but it's actually revolving around the sun and not a different planet, we call that a dwarf planet. How hot and cold is the moon? Thank you, Harriet. Yep. The moon can get up to 250 degrees and as cold as negative 200 degrees on a normal day. So when it's not facing the sun and it's dark, you really like can't, like there's no sun like rays hitting it, so there's no heat, and so it's just very cold. And then when the moon is when it is facing the sun, those rays hit it, and since there's not a big atmosphere, the rays hit it like with their like fullest potential and like the strongest they are, so it's very hot. What is the moon? Yeah, the moon is a a ball of rock that just orbits the Earth. Could we cook eggs there? Yeah, we could cook eggs. That is definitely hot enough to cook some eggs and pancakes.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
If it's so hot and so cold at the same time, how do the astronauts live there?
So that's why the astronauts wear their big and bulky space suits, and they're very they control the temperature very greatly, and so it protects them from that like very hot and like those solar rays, and it protects them from the heat and keeps them warm, and then it also insulates them and keeps them warm when it's very cold. And so they kind of keep that same temperature inside like at all times. And it's almost like when you like snuggle up in a very like big blanket.
Okay.
Can we freeze water on the moon? Yes. And that's where a lot of scientists have like discovered and found traces of ice on the moon, to where like we have not found any like liquid water, but there are traces and evidence that there is a lot of ice there on the moon. So we could definitely freeze water. Can we move the moon by pulling it? Yes, we could, but it would take a lot of it would take a lot of guys pulling it very strongly. Like you wouldn't be able to just pull it like with one person. You would need a lot of force to pull it. Was there ever a time where there was no craters on the moon? Yes. When it was first formed, there was no craters on the moon, but there's so many small objects and rocks just floating around in space that constantly impact the moon and other objects, that it was very short span in time where there was no craters on the moon, and craters started hitting it almost instantly.
If we had two moons, would they both have the new time?
Nope. Sorry, can you repeat that?
Would they both have if we had two moons, would they both new moon at the
Oh, so if we had two moons, they could have like the same any phase at the same time, and new, like such as the new moon, but like they would have to line up perfectly to where each one is like behind the Earth, like at the right amount, to where it could happen, but it would be much more rare than the new moon is just with R1. Is it possible the moon was once an asteroid pulled into Earth's orbit? Yeah, it is possible. Like we don't know exactly how the moon was formed. There's multiple theories, but an asteroid, like it could have been an asteroid that came in and found Earth and just started rotating around. Is there a core of the moon like we have a core in Earth? Yes, the moon does have a core, similar to the Earth. It's not the exact same material and composition and whatnot, but it does have a core as well. Which planet had life on it other than Earth? We have not found any life itself on any other planets, but we have found evidence towards life on multiple planets. So as we know, there's no other planets that have had life even on it. How much bigger is Mercury than our moon? I do not know the exact size relation. What if Jupiter had no moons? That would be quite interesting, because Jupiter has a lot of moons. It has like very many moons that kind of impact like its rotation and its orbit around the sun. And it would probably, like if it had no moons, it would probably impact Jupiter the same way that if our moon was ever gone. Is it possible for us to get a second moon one day? Yes. Just how like the moon was created, like something could come into our like around Earth and start orbiting Earth and become a second moon. Or we could even kind of build a second man-made moon.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah.
So when I watch videos of the moon landings and I see the astronauts on the moon, they're always like hopping really high.
Yes.
Why does that happen? How do they hop so high? Are they really strong?
Well, the astronauts are very strong. They do put a lot of work into it. They're not that strong to where they could just constantly hop around. What actually is happening is the moon, it's gravity, so like what kind of pulls you down into the Earth, and like what makes you fall back down is much weaker, and so therefore you're able to jump farther away without the moon like pulling you back down as hard or as strong. And so therefore you're able to jump around and move and float around practically.
What would happen if the Earth stopped spinning?
If the Earth stops spinning, many, many aspects of our daily lives would be changed, and it would change greatly. I guess we don't know exactly what would happen, but there are many like
It would always be nice.
assumptions and guesses. Yeah, it pretty much would always be day or night, for based on what side of the Earth you're on, or the days and nights, they would be like much longer. If you jump off the moon, will you come back down or stay floating? So yeah, you do come back down. You don't just float away. That's where it does have gravity, but it's just much weaker. It's not like out in actual space when you're just on your or like rocket or any spacecraft to where you're just floating around in zero gravity. The moon does have some to where it does pull you down. It just doesn't pull you down as strong. Yep, just like swimming in the sky. How often do solar eclipses happen? Solar eclipses happen like, I think like, yeah, it's like 4 times a year. Or it's not. Oh, I don't know the exact number. It's only a couple times a year, because like it has to happen at very specific times. So every 4 years. So every 4 years is a total solar eclipse. So that's when like it's fully blocked off and you can't see like the moon and you see the full like ring around it. Regular and like not as like good solar eclipses happen like pretty much every year. Do all astronauts get to go to the moon? No, sadly, not all astronauts get to go to the moon. Like Harriet said, a lot of them go to the International Space Station and do experiments and stuff like that up in space, but orbiting around the Earth, not on the moon. Only a select few are able to actually go to the moon.
Artemis mission.
Yeah. So the current plan for the United States and NASA is to send the next man and first woman to the moon by 2024, I believe. And so that is the current scheduled next person to get to the moon. If there is advanced enough technology, would we be able to go to Mars? Yes. And I mean, that's a part of what our generation and even your generation is kind of goal is to build the technology to where we can get all the way out to Mars in time to where it's not like a 2-year long trip. And what if Jupiter was bigger than the sun? If Jupiter was bigger than the sun, then all of the planets would, and even possibly the sun, would be rotating around Jupiter instead of the sun, as its gravity would be much greater than the sun's. Oh, don't forget that.
Hey Noah, I have a question.
Yes.
So you said how there's like less gravity on the moon. Then when the astronauts are training to go to the moon, how do they train to be like in that low gravity?
Oh, yeah. So since there's no like actual zero gravity here on Earth, how astronauts train is actually by like swimming in a pool, because like in water, that is the closest we can experience to zero gravity on Earth. And so there's actually a big pool down in Houston that NASA has, that is a large pool that has like parts and big like spacecraft like mock-ups down there where the astronauts can dive down and like work on it and practice experiencing that like partial zero gravity. Another thing is if you like fly a plane like straight up and then straight back down for like that like minute where you're like flying straight down, you actually do get to experience like almost like a local zero gravity, to where you are like floating around in the airplane. And so a lot of astronauts will do that as well to actually like get the feeling of zero gravity before they go up there. Yeah, they could use zero-G planes. Could all planets be in the same orbit? Like they could, but it would be very unlikely, and they would most likely collide and like break apart and then split off into the different planets at different orbits. How do astronauts move in space if there's no friction in space? So they still like they move around by pushing off objects or like actually throwing objects, like or using any thrusters, like any like engines and like the jet motors. So those all like will push off and like throw all of their like fuel and like burned like the flames sticking out the back. That all is throwing all the fuel out into the back, and therefore it's making the rocket go forward. And so like astronauts kind of move the same way. Like they can kind of like thrust and move things one direction, and therefore it causes them to go the other direction. Or on most like spacecraft and like the International Space Station, they just will like have these like clamps and handrails that they can hold on to and push off of. Why did Bob and Doug come back to the ISS so soon? So Bob and Doug didn't have so much actually planned up in space. That's their big test mission was to prove that the Dragon capsule could actually transport humans up to the space station. So they might go back up and do more, but their mission at the time was just to make sure that the Dragon capsule actually could make it with humans to the space station. if you jumped into Jupiter, would you fall right through? So if you jumped into Jupiter, you would fall into their atmosphere. We don't exactly know what is down underneath the atmosphere. So you would most likely hit a solid or liquid layer in there. And so you would not fall straight through. As well as Jupiter is very large and it would take a very long time to go all the way through it. Would the planets be different if they orbited around Jupiter? They would probably be very different. As Jupiter doesn't produce that that heat source and that solar radiation that provides so much, like many of the planets with energy, and it provides like us with life. If all planets were in the same orbit, could we live on those planets? I guess technically yes, but again, everything would have to be very perfect where it has the proper atmosphere and everything that we need to survive. What if Earth had the same gravity as the moon? If Earth had the same gravity as the moon, we would all be jumping around super high, and I mean, a lot of things would be very different. Like it doesn't put as much like stress on to your muscles, and therefore we wouldn't have to need to like work so hard to get things done. We would be able to like push things around, like move around much easier. So we wouldn't necessarily like be working as hard, and we would weigh much lighter. What is the name of the storm on Jupiter? So then I don't know the actual scientific name, but it is referred to as the big red dot. What if every planet was bigger than the sun? If every planet was bigger than the sun, then their gravitation, if their gravity would most likely be more than the sun, and therefore they would no longer revolve around the sun. Big is the storm a big red dot, or what is it? So it's almost like a hurricane. Like if you look at like a hurricane from space, you see the big like white like cloud like dot on Earth, and so the big red dot on Jupiter is the same thing, pretty much, but it's just like what it's made out of, and its cloud is red instead of white. What is the biggest moon? I believe the biggest moon that we know of is one of the moons around Jupiter. I do not know exactly which one, but yeah. Can a kid go to space or the moon? At the moment, no, because you would have to complete all of the astronaut training. But hopefully in the near future, or maybe not near, but kids will, and all people alike, and even animals will be able to go to space or the moon. Yes, the biggest moon is Ganymede around Jupiter. Why is Pluto considered a dwarf planet? Pluto is considered a dwarf planet because it is relatively small, and it is like smaller than many moons around any of the other planets, and therefore and it doesn't actually have any moons orbiting it, so therefore scientists and people decided to call it a dwarf planet instead of a regular planet. All right. Is Pluto bigger than our moon? I think it is around the same. I think it's actually smaller. I am not positive though. Isn't SpaceX trying to do that? I am assuming you're asking about SpaceX trying to send people into space, and yes, they are. They're one of the many companies at the moment trying to send people and beings alike into space for relatively cheap. How far away is the moon? It's about, I don't know the specific number. Yeah, so yep, a little over 200,000 miles. All right, we have 3 more minutes as well, so if you have like one more question, we can answer it. Will we ever break the speed of light? I'm gonna say yes. But will we ever in our lifetimes? Most likely not. I will not count it out because maybe one of you guys will find out how to go the speed of light. But at the moment, there is no one that can go the speed of light. All right. And this kind of wraps it up. Thanks, everyone. We hope you had a really fun time and good time, and I hope I answered all of your questions. Yeah, this is wrapping it up, and hope you will have a good time the rest of the week, listening and asking questions with all the other panels. There's a lot of other really cool panels and like activities to do. So it'll be a really fun week. All right. Goodbye, everyone. You're welcome, and thank you.